So I was building out Slack alerts in one of my apps this week where I wanted to be notified if users were changing some settings within this app. So I needed to know, okay, if I have an object before and an object after, what's the difference? What are the users adding? What are the users removing from these settings? What are they changing? So in this example today, we're going to walk through how you might take an object and create a diff function to understand the difference between the before and the after of an object. And we'll utilize tests along the way to add a bit of resiliency. This will of course all be in TypeScript. We'll create some more advanced types along the way, and we'll see how it goes. So I'm going to use my ultimate Node Docker setup just to bootstrap a project real fast. We're not going to go through the entire setup, and this isn't going to be in Docker today, but just to get an overall TypeScript setup going. So let me make a directory. I'm going to call this object diff example. We'll go in there. We're going to yarn init this project. Just pass a Y to give us all the defaults. Let's go ahead and use Node 18 today, actually. That's not quite long-term support yet as of this recording, but it will be soon. So we're going to use Node 18. And then we're going to bootstrap TypeScript. So we're going to add in TypeScript to our project. We're going to add in the default TypeScript config for Node 18. And we're going to create a tsconfig.json file. So let me go ahead and open this up in VS Code. We have an empty directory now. VS Code wants more permissions, that's okay. And let's create that tsconfig file. Again, this is just bootstrapping our project, doesn't really have anything to do with today's exact example. So let's do this. We're using Node 18. Excellent. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and create a .getignore file while we're here. I know I need node, modules, and dist. Okay, so these are some very basics. Let's go ahead and get Jest operational. Jest is what we'll be using to run our tests in TypeScript. So I'm going to use Jest, which helps Jest and TypeScript play nicely together. And since we're using yarn, I'm going to use their yarn command here. Open up my terminal. On Mac, that's Control tilde, by the way. So I'm adding the proper packages here, and they have this nice utility to where I can come in here and initialize a config file. So that created a jest.config file telling it to use tsjest. So again, we're creating a function. We want to take a before and after of an object and make a diff of it. So let's go in here and I'll show you a little bit about how I structure my apps sometimes, most of the time. So I usually put all the source in a source folder. But for things like this, I might create a modules folder. Today's example, we're going to pretend like we're Zillow, and we are allowing users to save searches for homes in a certain area. So I'm going to call this module saved search. Let's end that with TS. And how I do things a lot of times is I will create a single variable that I export called mod for module, and then whatever I'm calling this module. So mod saved search, and then I'll export functions based upon inside of this mod saved search object. This might make a little more sense in a minute. Let's go in here and let's start creating some types just so we can get on the same page as far as language goes here, and then we will jump into the tests. So let's create a type called saved search. And this saved search is going to be an object, and we're going to have three things on this object for today's example. Let's say that you can narrow your search by counties. And I'm going to assume that counties have some sort of ID in your database. So let's say that we have county IDs here, and this is an array of strings, array of IDs. Let's also say that you want to narrow your search by maybe some sort of listing type, and this listing type could be either for rent or for sell. And let's also say that maybe we can narrow this by property type or property types. So this could be an array of different strings. Let's say that this could be house, land, condo, or townhome. We'll keep it there for now. So this is what our saved search looks like, and I want to be able to take two saved searches and come up with a diff. So if a user went in and saved their search, later they went back and edited it, maybe they added or removed counties, they changed the listing type, they changed the property types, I want to be able to know what were the changes on this object. So let me create a test file. So saved search.test.ts. I'm going to open this up to the side. And let's create some tests. So I'm going to describe saved search. And we're going to create some tests in here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to have some sort of diff function that is exported on our mod saved search. I'm going to export that as the default from that file. And let's go ahead and write our test. Let's say that they change their listing type from rent to sell, and I want to be able to know that. So we want to detect changes on strings, so string values. So if we have a before that looks like rent or sell, let's go ahead and create a little helper function for us up here. And I'm going to say build saved search. And this is just going to build up a very basic saved search for us. And let me export this type so that I can then use it over here. I want to say that this is going to export a saved search, which is not importing for me. Saved search from saved search. Okay. So listing type, let's say that we're going to default this to sell, county, because we have to put something in there. County IDs, we're actually going to default to nothing, forgot a comma. And property types, we're going to default to as basic as we can make this, house. So we're making this as basic as possible. So let's say that before, let's do a basic saved search, and let's just ensure that this listing type is sell. And then after, we change that to rent. So I want to be able to have this diff algorithm detect these changes for me. So let's say that the result that we're looking for here is I want to get a diff result back that tells me that the property listing type before it was sell and after it was rent. So I would expect that mod saved search.diff passing a before and an after would equal result. Now I'm going to save this. It doesn't look like I have my Jest extension installed in VS Code here, because normally this would just run the test by itself. So let's go to extensions here. I'm going to search for Jest and install that. Okay, here we go. So expected 0 arguments, but got 2. Okay, so if I save this, I don't have little red X's. Let me see if I reopen the file. Here we go. Okay. Okay, so it got these 2 arguments. So we're going to have a before argument that will be of type saved search and an after argument of type saved search. Let's see, this is a little mad at me for strings. We may, okay. Let's classify these as saved searches. Okay, so this is running. My Jest is still not being happy with me. Saved search. Oh, I didn't save everything. Not a module. Okay, so my Jest is mad at me. Let's figure this out real fast though. So if I just go into my terminal myself and I do an npx jest, what happens? Okay, we do get, this does run properly. So I am not entirely sure why the one in my VS Code isn't running. I'm going to just quit VS Code real fast and open that back up. Since the Jest extension we installed is new, let's see if something happened there. Okay, restarting VS Code worked. Alrighty, so the issue is that we expected this nice result and we got undefined, and that's because our function right now does nothing. So let's build this up step by step here. So our keys that we have here, the values of them can either be strings or it can be an array of strings. So really it's kind of 2 diffing algorithms within one. We need to diff the array of strings and diff strings themselves. So let's, we're going to kind of hard code this to save search for now. And then we'll bow out of that a little bit later and see if we can make this a bit more of a generic diff algorithm. So what I want to do is create a result, and we're just going to start with listing type. And let's say we want to diff 2 strings. So before, after, and let's create a diff string function where we take a before string and an after string and we do something with that. Now there are going to be 2 cases. Either the strings will be the same or they won't be the same. And in that case, when they're not the same, or when they are the same, we need to figure out what do we want to intend there. If they are the same, do we return a before and after that's the same? Do we return an undefined? I think in my case, I'm going to return an undefined. So if before And if before equals after, then we're just not going to return anything. So undefined, but if they're not the same, then I want to return before and after as an object. All right. So let's do before.listingType and after.listingType. Okay, let's save all of this. And let's see what we have here. Did expect a little something different. Oh, we're not returning anything. That makes sense. Okay, so we got what we wanted there. That's a pretty easy case. So we're detecting changes on string values. So let's say when the strings are the same, let's make sure that that comes back as undefined. So when they are the same, meaning that we're just not going to customize the listing type. So these should be the same before and after. In fact, we're just going to make sure of that. Then if we save this, then listing type is undefined, meaning the diff of the listing types are undefined because they are the same. Now, in my result, I may not actually want to return this at all. I may only want to return keys that have changes. So let's do that. Let's say that the result needs to only return things that have changes. So I'm going to take a peek over here. For this, I do want to use, I'm going to pull in Lodash because there's a nice little handy function in Lodash that I like. Let's open up a terminal here. So I'm going to yarn add Lodash, and because we're in TypeScript, I'm going to add the types to our dev dependencies, types Lodash. And Lodash has a nice function called omit by. So let's take a look at that. The Lodash docs are pretty great. Omit by. So what we can do with omit by is, What we can do with omit by is pass in an object, and we're going to filter down the values based upon whether or not some sort of predicate returns true. So in this case, it's omitting all things within the object that are numbers. So 1 is a number, 3 is a number, the string 2 is not a number, so that's the only thing that it returns. In our case, we want to omit anything that comes back as undefined. So let's return omit by. So we're going to return anything that is undefined. So is undefined, that also happens to be a Lodash function. So if I save this, I would expect this test to fail. It is not failing. Maybe those are equal. Why do I all of a sudden not have confidence in these Jest tests running? Maybe this is actually coming back equal. That would be very odd to me, though. They both, okay. This is weird. So let me do npx Jest. So if I'm running this, that passes. Okay, we actually have 2 tests named the same thing. I wonder if that's part of it. Okay. It ignores equal string values. Okay, so that passed, and that passed. Okay, so that's interesting. The just to equal here is actually not detecting whether or not the keys are the same, or the presence of the keys, I should say. I don't think that I even knew that. So let's see if, does this have to contain, to have, to match? Okay, so how do we know? Okay, just expect to have key. To match object. That is probably what we want here. There we go. Okay, that is better. So let's remove that. Okay, so we're expecting an empty object to come back because if things are the same, we don't want to return keys that are the same. So to match object, that's what I should be using. Okay, so if they are different, then we get this. If they are the same, then we get this. Okay, so that takes care of string. Let's go ahead and do the same thing on property type. Again, we're gonna kind of hard code this for now, but we're gonna come back and try to make this more generic. We do have an issue here though where, okay, so property types is an array. Well, let's move on to that anyway. I was thinking that was a single string. It's not. So let's do a diff array. So we have a before string and an after string. And let's say that in this case, between two arrays, we want to know which elements were added and which elements were removed in this array. Now, Lodash, again, has another cool utility function. They call it difference. And difference takes two arrays and it tells you the difference between them. So it takes the first array and it tells you what is not in the second array. So in this case, it shows you what was removed from a before and an after. So removed would look like difference from before and after, and added would actually look like the opposite of that. So after and before. Okay, so in this case, we're going to diff an array of property types. So the array here is the arguments are string arrays, okay? So let's say that we want to detect changes on array values. And let's say that in our first example, we have county IDs of ID 1. And in our second example, we have, actually, let's say nothing. So what I want to expect here is that our county IDs, we've added nothing, and we removed ID 1. That's really what I want to see here. So really we're detecting removals from array values. So let's save that, and we get an error here. So let's see what we have. County IDs. We are not doing that. We're hard coding our diff algorithm up here, and we're only doing property types right now. So let's duplicate that, and we're going to do county IDs. So that takes care of now listing type, county IDs, and property types. Everything is represented in our diff algorithm. So let's save that, see if that makes our result happy. It doesn't look like it's making it happy. Why not? Okay, so property types. It's not showing any removals. Okay, that agrees. Okay, so we have before and after, before and after. We're diffing our array, added, removed, before, after. Hey Mubarak, thanks for tuning in. Let's see here. Not sure why that would be a difference. Okay, let's hard code a value here and just make sure we're getting back. So we're adding Kevin and we're removing nothing. Okay, we did get that back. That's good. Okay. We saved again. Oh, I don't think I saved my source file before. All right, that worked. Let us detect additions from array values. Man, didn't work because I didn't save. Additions. So if we start empty and we add one, this now needs to be an added, and we've removed nothing. Does that turn up green? That turns up green. Okay, let's do one more test. We're detecting both additions and removals. So let us say that we started with ID 1 and we're ending with ID 2. So we are, from the before to the after, we are adding ID 2 and we are removing ID 1. If we save that, then that comes back. So this is a basic diff algorithm to take the difference of an object's values, whether they are strings or string arrays. Now this is pretty tied to our object here. But let's say that we wanted to up this one level and make this more generic so we could take any type of object as long as its keys were either strings or arrays of strings and take the diff of them. That's going to get a bit more advanced here, and we'll see if we run into any issues or not. But let's just jump in. So we have this going, that's good. Let us now work on this diff and see if we can make the changes to this function. And because we have our test suite now, we'll know if our changes to this pass or if they fail. So we're hard coding our result here to be an object of these three keys. But if we don't know what the object is going to be, then we need to iterate over this and decide whether we're going to go with diff string or whether we're going to go with diff array. So we're going to create some types here. I'm going to say that we have a type, let's see, a diffable object. And this is going to be some object where, I think I'll start with record and then see if that works. So this is going to be a record where the keys are all strings and the values are either strings or string arrays. So that is a diffable object. So instead of passing in a saved search type to diff, we're going to pass in a diffable object. So let's pass in diffable object, diffable object. Now immediately we get some errors here in our types because it doesn't know what type of object this is. So we need to iterate over this and in a kind of a key value format, and then choose whether we're going to go with strings or whether we're going to go with arrays. So let's take, we're going to use an object from entries function. This is a really great function. We're going to start with the before. Now what if the before and afters have different keys? That would be weird. We're going to hold that thought. We may have to, let's see here. So object from entries. So what this does is we have an object here, and this generates an array of arrays. So if our saved search looks like this, where we have an object, listing type, count IDs, property types, then this is going to generate an array This is getting hard. Okay, array of arrays, so where we would have listing type and in our case, let's see, is that, no, okay. Listing type, say rent, and county IDs with a value of, yet again, another array. But the benefit of this is now that this is an array, we can iterate over this key value, key value, key value. So we're going to take this object.fromEntries. We can now map over this. Why is that mad at me? Diffable object. Okay, I thought this might get mad at me. Let me comment this out. It doesn't like, oh, okay, I got this flipped. So object from entries is how you take an array of key values and create an object. We want to make an array, no, object. I'm totally blanking here. Object from entries. I want the opposite of that. Array. Oh my gosh, I'm totally blanking. What is it? Object.fromEntries. It's the opposite. Object.entries. Okay. So from entries takes an array of key value arrays and creates an object. Object.entries is what I said earlier of taking an object and generating key value arrays. So now we can take these, map over them. We now have a key and a value. And this is going to be the result. It's going to be the result array. We have a key value. So the key might be listing type, county IDs, or property types. The value could be strings or array of strings. So let's see if the types are coming in. Okay, so yeah, so key, always going to be a string, value, either string or array of strings. So let's say that if value, type of value is string, then we're going to return a diff string. Now, let's see, if we do before key and after key, this says string is not assignable to type string. Oh, let's do our value. Now, this doesn't know that after is a string. We want to say that both of these diffable objects are actually the same type. So, you know, I don't want to pass in a saved search here and a user settings object here. We want to say that these are actually of the same type, not just two kinds of any kind of diffable object. So I'm going to create a generic type here. So I'm going to call this T object, and it extends diffable object so that we can say for certain, and I don't know if this is going to fix our error here, but it's going to make us feel better. This is going to say for certain that both of these objects are of the same type. I can't pass in two different types here. We might just have to say that, okay, we know that the before type is a string, so we're just going to say that this is a string in the after as well. We could add another guard check here, maybe throw an error if this is not a string type. I'll leave that as an exercise for you. So if it's a string, then we do that. If it's not a string, what is the type of an array? An object. That's not fun. We're going to say otherwise, return diff array of value and after key as string array. So now we have a resulting array, entries array, keep that in mind, where we're iterating over the key value. We don't know what the keys are. We do know that the values are either strings or array of strings. If they're strings, we're doing our diff string. If they're an array, we're doing this. How are our tests looking over here? Not really running, I don't think, because we still have errors on the left. So we'll keep going here. Now we don't have a variable called result anymore. We have result array. Now remember, this is an array of key value arrays. So now I want to take that and I want to say that result is the function I couldn't get over earlier, object.fromEntries, and I'm going to actually call this entries for clarity. Entries. Okay, so I'm mapping over this, but I'm only returning the diff. I actually want to return entries back. So let me return the keys along with these diffs. Now we have a proper set of entries that we can turn right back into an object. An alternative to this would be, while I'm here, there's a nice Lodash function. Again, I'm surprised I didn't go here to begin with, but there's a nice Lodash function called map values, and that takes an object and allows us to map over that object item by item and iterate and mutate even or immutably mutate, return a new object with new values. That may even look a little cleaner here. I'm going to stay with this for now. Just know that that's an option. Okay, so let me save here, and looks like our tests are all passing. Imagine that. Let me save again. Let me take a look though. One thing I'd like to do is I'd like to create a type that is the resulting diff type. Let me show you what I mean. So if I take my diff up here, and I make it equal to mod save search.diff before and after, this could really be any. It says partial of any. It could be part of anything. But I would like a nice, well-typed diff to go along with this diff algorithm. Now, in our case, we don't even know what the keys and values are, so how would we know what to type this function as far as what it returns? Well, we can use a really powerful mechanism in TypeScript, which honestly I'm only kind of learning how to use, and that is TypeScript conditional types. So conditional types are kind of like ternary they are ternary operators, where you can say if this type extends another type, then it may be something, or else it may be something else. So how can we apply this to our case? Well, in our case, values can either be strings or arrays of strings. So let's say I wanted to create a type called diff, and diff would be the return type to our diff function here. And based upon the inputs, it would give me a nice, well-typed output for what the shape of that diff would be. So let's say that type diff, and this is going to be a generic type. So I'm going to call this once again TObject that extends diffable object. So a diff, and I created this earlier, so I am no shame here going to reference my notes. So in this case, we don't know the keys and the values. So we'll have to use the magic and power of TypeScript in order to get that. So we do know that TObject is an object. So the keys here in our objects, we're going to define our keys and our values. So the key is in one of the keys of TObject. I don't know if there's a simple way to explain this along the way. I think you just kind of have to learn this thing through osmosis. So key of TObject basically returns to me a list of keys within the object. So the key is going to be within our original list of keys of this generic. Now the value of this, again, we are working on the return value of the diff. So for each key, we're either going to have a before and after, if it's a string, or add and removed, if it's an array. So we can utilize conditional types to return one type or another. So let's say that in our case, if TObject for whatever key that we're on, so I'm referencing my key, if TObject extends an array of strings, then we know that it's going to be one type. If it doesn't extend an array of strings, it's going to be another. So if it extends an array of strings, then we know that it's going to, the shape of it will look like this. So we'll have an added list of strings and a removed list of strings. If it is not an array of strings, then it would be the string type. So the diff would be a before and after instead. So let me go in here. Let me go in here and say before string, after string. Let me save this so that it formats nicely. So we have a diff of some generic diffable object. It has the same keys of that object, but remember, only maybe. We maybe have that key if there's a difference. If there's not a difference between the objects, remember that we actually don't expect there to be anything. We expect it to be empty or no result for that object. So I'm going to add a question mark in here after the key to say that it has all the same keys in our original object, except that some of the keys may be undefined if there is no diff. So then we use a conditional type to say if it's a string array, then we have this shape for the diff, added and removed. If it's not a string array, then we have a before and an after. Hey D1 Hoops. Oh, cool. Hope this helps you with your lesson tomorrow. Okay, so we have before and after, we have added. Okay, let's look at our diff. So now our diff, we need to pass a generic to it. Well, this function itself has a generic along with it. So the return value of this will be the diff of t object. So now over in our tests, if I take a look at this diff return type, we now have a diff of saved search. And so now this variable type now has a strongly typed type to it because of what we're passing in. It knows we're passing in saved searches, therefore this is going to be a diff of saved searches. So if I do diff, I get all of the keys on my original saved search object. So county IDs, I would have added or removed because that is an array of strings. Whereas instead, if I go to listing type, I have before and after because that is just simply 2 strings. So this is how you could use the power of generics to create a generic function that could really take any type of object as long as it follows the pattern of what we expect, which is an object with string keys and string or string array values. So hope this was a nice example for you of several different things. One, how we could develop something iteratively. First, hard coding exactly what we want and then backing into a bit more of a generic solution. We've used generic TypeScript types. We've used Jest. We breezed through setting up a TypeScript project, getting this going. We restarted VS Code just for good measure, and hopefully had some fun along the way. So thanks for signing in today. I hope that this was helpful to you. Check out my other videos or subscribe to my channel if you would like to help me out. And overall, happy TypeScripting, and I hope you have a great day.